Firstly, we're extremely grateful and honored that we have this opportunity to present our work at the forthcoming awards by Minara. And it gives us a chance to sit back in a sense and reflect on our journey as to how we got here. It started roughly 25 years ago. It was just after the dawn of democracy in South Africa, and there was this call for the massification of higher education, given our difficult past. And so post-94, some of the founding fathers of Regent Business School, Professor Yusuf Karodia and Professor Bana, both of whom are late now, wanted to react to this call for massification of higher education. How do we create access for the vast majority of South Africans who were previously denied access and disadvantaged and therefore could not access higher education? So that really was where it all started, the journey started, in how we can become a solution to this problem. And through the grace of the Almighty, we started this institution in the 1990s. And 25 years later, when we look back, it's been an interesting journey. We've built an institution with thousands of alumni in different parts of the world. We have a footprint that goes across Southern Africa. We run a number of learning centers in different provinces of South Africa and some countries in Southern Africa. And most recently, we joined a network of private universities across the African continent. So that's given us now an international perspective and going beyond our country of origin, South Africa and Southern Africa. And we can take now an African perspective, if you like, on what are the major trends and challenges in higher education. But through the grace of the Almighty, it's been a successful journey. We currently have about 11,000 students across a whole range of higher education programs. As a private university, if you like, we're entering into a very interesting, albeit uncertain phase ahead of us. I think disruption is an interesting word, and maybe Regent being a disruptor is an interesting phrase as well. Perhaps the one thing to keep in mind is what we're trying to resolve through our work in higher education. I think we always ask ourselves, why do we do what we do? I regularly ask my colleagues, it's not just how and when and what, but why do you do? What brings you to work early in the morning? What keeps you here late if you need to work till late? And so we keep on asking ourselves if the rationale is clear. So maybe to give you some numbers, to give you a sense of perspective, we have in South Africa roughly 60 million people. And a significant number of the 60 million, let's call it 50%, are young people. So that's 20 to 25 million, up to 30 million South Africans, young, require education, skills, need to find jobs, the economy must absorb them, employability is a big issue in South Africa, unemployment is a big issue in South Africa, and the economy needs skills. And out of this 25 to 30 million young South Africans, there's not more than 1,200,000 in public higher education. A further 250, at most 300,000 are in private higher education. So in total, there's 1.5 million, only 1.5 million young South Africans who are accessing higher education, public and private. But the reality is there are millions of South Africans desperately seeking a space in higher education, who unfortunately will not find a seat in higher education. And that means that their skills is at risk, their families are at risk, the economies are at risk, and society is at risk. Pre-COVID, there were major disruptions in education. There were major disruptions in commerce and industry. Jobs and industries were being created and destroyed by the fourth industrial revolution. This is before COVID. COVID has unfortunately exacerbated the problem of disruption. More jobs and lives have been lost. More industries have been damaged, probably permanently. And in this kind of context then, how do you use disruptive technology for good reasons, for positive outcomes? And I think education and disruptive technology has a lot of benefit if we can figure out how is it that we can let technology and people race together rather than race against each other so that nobody is left behind. That's the kind of complexity that we deal with in education on a daily basis. How do we train people in coding and robotics and the fourth industrial revolution and related skills so that nobody is left behind. That is by far the biggest challenge I think education providers across the world have, and we certainly in South Africa and by extension the African continent, we have a bigger problem to deal with because access to technology is challenging at best. Our access to data is challenging, the costs of data challenging, infrastructure is a problem across the continent, definitely in sub-Saharan Africa. So we have to work a lot harder than our counterparts in the Northern Hemisphere or in the Western world, loosely speaking. We have to work a lot harder to make sure that we've got equitable access and affordable access to higher education so that, again, nobody is left behind. So Regent being a disruptor hopefully is a mission with a purpose. We're not disrupting for the sake of disrupting. I think maybe the theme of disruption must be taken one step further. So we need to disrupt the system enough so more people can access higher education and that it becomes a lot more affordable. But the other element of disruption, if we extend the theme, is that there's a lot on the horizon for education and for young people that's very worrying, but it's also a moment that's pregnant with opportunity, if you like. There are new forms of education, and I think the COVID period fast-tracked what a lot of universities around the world were wanting to do anyway, digitally transform and digitize. But I think COVID sped up those plans and people digitized under an emergency during 2020, 2021. Now that the emergency, God willing, has passed us, how do we extend the benefit of this disruptive technology? And I think we're seeing early examples of it already. There are new agile institutions, generally known as ed-tech, educational technology companies, that are becoming very meaningful players in higher education globally, in skills development. So one can go to university, so to speak, without going to university. It's not just remote learning, there are new models of education people are using for online and blended learning. For example, there's a phenomenon that's now about a decade old called MOOCs, Massive Open Online Courses. And this is literally thousands of educational services, short courses, high-end, low-end, strategic, non-strategic, etc., across all sectors of society that in South African rands you can pay a few hundred rands and do an online course as a MOOC. But then that also is becoming very mature, and these days you have what is called nano degrees, micro-credentialing qualifications. And so a young South African, or a young African for that matter, has a number of strategic choices to make. Should I burn my bridges with society and go to campus for a few years? Should I sit in the comfort of my home, possibly look for a job, have a side hustle, and study a nano degree? Should I build a whole plethora or bouquet of nano qualifications and over a period of many years through interesting short courses, I build for myself an interesting career? Keep in mind that there's a World Economic Forum statistic that is very interesting, maybe cliche, but still interesting. That 65% of children entering school will end up in jobs that are yet to be created. 65% of everybody going to grade R or grade 1 will do something 12 or 15 years from now that has not been thought of. That just gives you a sense of scale and velocity of disruption. There'll be completely new jobs and new industries we've not thought about. How then must education organize itself so that it's able to take advantage of this disrupted future? When the future is so scrambled, uncertain, and difficult to predict, how do you run curriculum? How do you run educational programs? How do you prepare students for the world of work when there's so much of disruption in the world of work? So I think the disruptive theme is definitely impacting education. There are lots of opportunities and there's certainly threats. Many large universities with a big physical presence and big campuses and lots of staff are thinking about whether they'll be sitting with empty classrooms and all the faculty will be sitting in their homes with a Teams call or a Zoom call or some other technology, interacting with lots of students in other parts of the world. So what is really the future of education? I think all the stakeholders are not sure, but there's certainly opportunities and there are threats, and disruptive and exponential technologies is a major stimuli for all of these opportunities and threats. We need to recognize there's a lot of disruption in the environment, positive and negative. And there are new models of engaging with skills in learning and university education, etc. And the third reality is that society must not be left behind whilst the big tech companies figure out the future of humanity. And in a sense, Regent Business School is trying to, in its own way, react to these priorities, these macro, meta priorities locally and globally that are relevant. And in our style and in our strategy of how we organize Regent Business School to be relevant and to have impact in society, we're thinking about these priorities, the skilling emergency, dealing with disruptive technology, and that no one should be left behind, in that we're doing deep curricular reform. We're looking at what's relevant in the curriculum and what needs to change, how our faculty need to be retrained, how our students need to come in with certain skills assumed to be in place. So we've adopted a massive priority around enterprise development and entrepreneurship. And we don't want to teach entrepreneurship as a module. We want to make entrepreneurship the philosophy behind all our teaching and learning, so that we are building enterprises, and we've attempted to build micro enterprises whilst our students are studying with us. So we simulate the reality of what they're going to face when they finish graduation, God willing, through Regent Business School. So if we can incubate business ideas, if we can incubate early stage entrepreneurs, if we can incubate our students' ideas as micro enterprises, and then we need to adjust the curriculum accordingly. So that's the way in which we're trying to be relevant. And secondly, we've created a number of innovation maker spaces or academic maker spaces or labs. We call them iLead labs, where we teach technology, disruptive, exponential technology, 4IR skills, 21st century skills, so that our students don't have to be surprised when they leave our campuses and they enter the world of work. They mustn't be surprised by the fact that robots are replacing certain human tasks, that automation is a big priority for businesses, that commerce and industry are looking for young graduates to create value using and leveraging technology rather than being afraid of technology. So we are bringing all of those skills into the curriculum, and that's how we're trying to have impact and be relevant. And I guess if you had to ask me how South Africans and how Africans should partner with us in this journey of trying to be relevant and impactful, then I think at the least we must agree it can't be business as usual. Whether it's in your career, in your skills acquisition, in how you understand the world around you, or how you make sense of the scramble in the future, we have to become partners as key stakeholders who are jointly trying to figure out all the fog we see in the environment and in the horizon, that we have to join each other. And I appeal to young South Africans and everybody else, even in the working world and mature professionals, that the skilling emergency is a reality, disruptive technology is a reality, and societal impact and the negative possible impact, God forbid, with technology, we both have to work together and mitigate those risks so that nobody's left behind. I hope that if you had to ask me what we'd like to be remembered for as Regent Business School, it would be that we worked together with many partners in society to leverage technology for the benefit of humanity, and we worked hard to make sure that nobody's left behind.